sampling is simple. Order just one piece. See the quality for yourself. Then launch when you're ready. Every order is made on demand. From one sample to full-scale drops, every piece is printed, checked.
Watching Miles Morales lose it on Peter Parker Spider-Man is amazing. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we're here with Age of Revelation, the radioactive Spider-Man time. Now, if you don't know what Age of Revelation is, we'll talk about that here in a second. But what this does is this picks up with Miles traveling through Revelation territory alongside Spider-Gwen. And one of the things they talk about is how the injection they have protects them from what's basically the X-Virus for 26 hours. And that protection started the instant they injected themselves. So they probably have more like 24 hours, give or take a little bit. That's kind of standard when it comes to like, take this injection, it'll protect you, that kind of cliche. But one of the things that Gwen asks is she's like, when is the last time that you were here? And Miles says 8 years ago. And she asks, were you here for Peter? And he says, yeah, it didn't go very well. And so one of the things this establishes is that there's bad blood between Peter Parker and Miles Morales, because what it does is it jumps back to Revelation Day. Now, kind of an explanation here for what's happening with the Age of Revelation, if you need a reminder. Doug Rams, also known as Cypher, was basically chosen to become like the new herald of Apocalypse, right? Kind of the guy that represents Apocalypse's goals, machinations, different things like that. Doug Ramsey had unleashed the X-Virus on Earth, which served two purposes. The first one was to quite literally begin the process of terraforming the world to essentially turn it into a new Krakoa. The second thing that it did was not that dissimilar from the Terrigen bomb back in the days of Inhumanity, if you guys remember that, which is to say, the X-Virus started mutating people. Now, these people who were mutated, it wasn't simply just because they had an X gene that was never activated. No, it literally modifies their genome. And that's what you kind of get here. When you pick up with Peter Parker, rescuing your mom and her daughter during Revelation Day, when all this craziness is starting to kick off. And he says it's funny how crystal clear things become when the world loses all meaning. We thought we had time. We thought someone could stop the 3K transmutation virus. But that's the funny thing about exponential growth. One day, it's a problem way over there. The next day, your city falls apart beneath you. Now, the reason why it's referred to as the 3K transmutation virus is because, as we talked about in one of the previous videos that we did for Age of Revelation, 3K was an organization that basically created mutants. And when the entire virus kicked off, Revelation literally blamed it all on 3K. So everyone assumes that they're the ones who did it. And for the most part, only those who were in the know knew at the very beginning it was Revelation the entire time. And so what ends up happening is that when Peter saves this mother and her daughter, he calls MJ, right? Because you're in the midst of pandemonium, the city's falling apart. Of course he's going to call his loved ones. And when MJ picks up, right, she's just like, Peter, where are you? And he says, a few blocks away, I have to help someone, and then I will be there. And that's where this little girl starts talking about how she doesn't feel so good. Her mom just starts mutating and just spewing all over this girl. The girl in turn develops powers and fires them back at her mom. It basically blows her mom apart. And that's when MJ says, listen to me, it's May. Something's happening. And that's where Peter is like, I'm coming. Get to the roof. And so at that point, he swings back home and he says, humans were either dying or mutating. Buildings were crumbling or transforming. As horror after horror unfolded, a thought pounded with each passing heartbeat. And he just thinks to himself, right, MJ, where are you? And when he shows up there to try to find MJ, he says, when will I turn or die or worse? And so when he gets inside, he's hunting for MJ and he's hunting for Aunt May. And when he gets in there, he sees Aunt May standing there and essentially pieces of Mary Jane Watson everywhere. And at that point, we jump back to what's happening right now. And so in the present day, while Miles and Gwen are on their way to see Peter Parker, you pick up with Spider-Man in the aftermath of basically helping out a mutant by the name of Fuse, who was essentially doing like some road terrorist stuff, if you want to call it that, right? Doing what he could to kind of take pot shots against like the forces of Revelation and so on. But one of the things that Peter talks about here is where his life is in the here and now. And he says, I always liked the village. It embodies something different from the chaos of Times Square or the exclusivity of the fancy areas. Even after the year-long Manhattan massacre, the reconstruction and the rise of Revelation's gene-based caste system, the village is alive. We don't call it the village anymore because, second only to resilience, New Yorkers excel at giving dumb nicknames to neighborhoods. I don't know if that's true. But he says high side enjoys the favor of revelation, resources, and a population of quote-unquote pure mutants. Low town is everything else, good and bad. It feels like home. And so when you pick up with Peter, he's actually meeting with Celia Reyes. Now, Celia Reyes is an old school mutant from way back in the day. She originally debuted during Operation Zero Tolerance from Scott Lobdell. The idea behind her is she creates force fields. Now, if you end up getting Celia Reyes confused with Joanna Cargill, don't feel bad. I do it all the time. They look very similar all the way down to the hairstyle, especially when Celia Reyes is done up. But one of the cool things about this is that when she meets with Spider-Man, as you can tell, he's physically mutated. Right? Radioactive Spider-Man, the name rings true. And he says the kid wants to be an X-Man, the good guy, right? Talking about fuse. And she says, right, you didn't tell me that you were back, Peter. And she says, you haven't cleared the exposure window. And of course, Peter goes and starts making out with her, right? He's like, which is bad, because I also use a Q-tip in my ear. But what you end up learning is why he's physically mutated in the first place. What's going on with him? Because she says, I can't make out with you after I give you your treatment. And so Peter says, we call it treatment. The euphemism keeps Celia from screaming. My cells have always been slightly radioactive. As a result, it takes longer for the X-virus to attack my DNA. I figured correctly that more radiation would equal more resistance. It took a while, but we dialed it in so that a dose lasts a few weeks. Then I start coughing blood, rinse and repeat. Then the blood comes from different places, but it's all worth it. And he says, besides being an exceptional doctor, trauma surgeon, and kisser, Celia is also a mutant, like force fields, impenetrable, though she does feel the impacts. If she feels the radiation that seeps out of me after treatment, she's never once complained. And so there is a little banter between the two of them, but one of the things this establishes is that they are in love. Right? This is not some kind of a fling. It's not one of these things where Peter Parker lost MJ and now Celia's a rebound and she's kind of okay with it because, I don't know, she's just kind of living her hot girl summer. They're actually in love with each other. And that's why it makes her sad when she acknowledges the fact that this is going to kill Peter Parker. It's only a matter of time before he dies. And so what ends up happening is that an alarm kind of comes out here. And there's a question, right? That's a new one. Is there a leak in the reactor? And that's what Peter says, no, right? It's not the reactor. And when they start poking around, they realize it's at the other lab. And this is when stuff starts to go off the rails. Because Peter's just like, we have to get there. Like, I have to get there and I have to respond. There's a sense of panic and dread here, right? Like, I need to show up here. If I don't, bad things are going to happen. And where Celia tells him, right, like, you are too weak, you have to sleep this off. He says, 5 biosigns, Cecilia. How am I going to sleep? Knowing that, because the implication seems to be that whoever shows up in this lab, they don't know what they're dealing with, and they're going to get themselves killed. And so that's when you pick up with what are essentially the Marauders, right? Now, the Marauders, in the context of the story, they're a throwaway team. Sinister does have his own team as part of Age of Revelation. It's called Sinister Six. So it's like Omega Red and a handful of other people. But these guys just kind of allow the story to happen for the most part. But they do give us some pretty important statements here, right? They say, this belongs to us. They tried hiding the riches of our kind away amid the trash. But the Marauders will not be denied. They thought we were bashing low-town garbage from before, but as they're kind of going back and forth, the leader literally says, Sinister had a number of labs like this one hidden throughout the world. The historical value of this equipment for our movement cannot be overstated. We cannot let Mr. Sinister's legacy rot down here under the purview of the impure. And so he just says, take what you can, keep it intact. And what happens is exactly what you would expect it to. It's one of these things when once they start activating and unlocking everything, everything starts to hit the fan. Because Peter shows up here, right? He said, I'm only going to say this once, so open your ear holes wide. Get out of here or you will die. And they literally reject him, right? They're just like, no, you can't tell us what to do. It's the wide-eyed, naive people who just convince themselves that they know what they're doing. All the while, they have no clue what's going on. And so Peter just kind of starts asking questions, like, you have the power. Why would you cut the power of this place? And so as the fight starts to drag on, Celia shows up here, helping Peter as best she can. But she says, you should hurt. If my force fields take another hit like that, it's nap time, right? Wrap this up fast. But again, the fight goes on. These marauders believe they're in the right. They're messing with things they don't understand. And Celia says that, right? Because when the leader of the marauders says, there must be some hell of a treasure if these race traders are risking their pathetic lives to protect it. Celia calls him an idiot and then tells him, we came here to save you. Peter came here to save you. Because in that moment, the door smashes down. And Peter says, everything I learned that matters, I learned in this city. New Yorkers stand up for each other, even if we don't particularly like one another. Because when push comes to shove, life is precious. And just like this monstrosity of a being comes out of the cell and
for every white tear and whoopsie, clean it.
kills the leader of the marauders on the spot. And then Peter just said, it's over in 83 seconds. I force myself to watch. I cannot stop shaking. Celia is so scared, her nails break skin on my shoulder. She finally lets go when I say, it's all right, like everything's going to be okay. And so Peter approaches the person who has come out of the cell, and it turns out it's Aunt May. It's Aunt May. Right now, here's the crazy thing. I told you guys, it's wild. Here's the crazy thing. Peter just says, right, hey there, pretty lady, did you have a nice snack? And she just says, oh yes, right, I feel quite refreshed. Why are you in that outlandish costume? And Peter just says, right, you never turn your back on your family. And he's like, oh, it's just a Halloween costume, right? It's scary, right? You know, it's not a big huge deal, right? It's Aunt May acting the way Aunt May always has. And in fact, just before Miles arrives on the scene, we kind of get this moment between Peter and Aunt May here, right? Where she kind of talks about her state of mind, right? And she's like, it's such a terrible feeling. You read the first few chapters of a book and then suddenly it hits you that you might have already read it, but you're not sure, right? Never get old, Peter. And Peter's just like, oh, not me, pretty lady, forever young. How do you feel? She's like, oh, a bit tired. You know, I know that it isn't a long trip from Queens to Manhattan, but everything's just softer these days. But then she catches herself and she's like, wait, I don't live in Queens. That was where we raised you, right? And he says, yeah, like my favorite place on earth. And she's like, that tiny house? No. Your home is so big, right? Dark and dusty. In a lot of ways, she's showing signs of Alzheimer's, signs of dementia, where she's kind of forgetting who she is, or she's catching herself in these moments when her mind thinks that something that's happened is actually happening right now, confusing moments in time over the course of her life. But there's also a far darker element here, because when she starts talking about Mary Jane Watson, she catches herself, and she kind of starts to mention how MJ is dead. And Peter cuts her off, right? No, she moved a while ago, right? It's all right. You know, I can't expect you to keep track of all the ladies in my harem. And of course, Aunt May's just like, oh yeah, like, you are no Casanova. That was never the case, right? She's like, thank God you finally settled down with someone willing to put up with your nonsense. And Peter, understanding what's going on here, but Aunt May, basically being blissfully aware, just says, I love you, Aunt May. You never gave up on me. I will never give up on you. And so that's what leads into the fight between Peter and Miles Morales. Because what Peter's doing is he's hunting for a way to quote-unquote cure or fix Aunt May. We don't quite know what's wrong with her yet, but he's trying to find a solution. And so he ends up showing up at Rand Applied, what used to be Rand Industries, right? Danny Rand's company, the Iron Fist. And where he is ambushed by a handful of different guys, and they're kind of getting the upper hand on him because they're all incredibly capable, and they're designed explicitly to combat someone like Spider-Man. Miles and Spider-Gwen show up on the scene. And Miles just says, right, I miss jokes. Remember jokes, Ghost Spider? Or she's like, you make jokes all the time, Spin, just not when you're kicking the crap out of fashions. Now, here's the funny thing about Miles being called Spin in this comic. That's actually a throwback to the old animated kids show that he was in back in the day. They called him Spin. I love the nickname. I mean, Miles is what I'm always going to call him, but the nickname's kind of cool. But when he shows up here, he and Peter come face to face. And Peter asks, right, like, how are you here? Is there like a cure for this whole thing? And Miles just says, maybe if you come out of your hole once in a while, you would know the answer to that question, which is that there is no cure. Now, of course, Gwen is kind of playing referee between the two of them, at least for the moment. And where, you know, backup and whatnot is called in, basically Miles, Gwen, and Peter are able to hold their own and essentially take out pretty much all all these guys and then make their escape. But that's where things start to go sideways. Because Peter says, it sort of feels like you want to hit me. Like, I want to hit me sometimes too. I'll give you a freebie. And initially Miles says no, right? Like, you would never get back up again. And he says the Avengers need you out west. All the way out west. And Peter's just like, Miles, right? Make sure you get a bagel for the trek home. They're better than you remember. And Miles just kind of responds. He's like, do you have any idea what we had to do to get out here to find you? And Peter's just like, I mean, I can imagine, but my family's here. And Miles just says, like, we used to be family too. Celia will understand. And Peter just says, May's awake. And in that moment, Miles loses it. And he's like, that's why you're still here? And just immediately starts attacking Peter Parker, just pummeling this guy. And Peter's trying to fight him off, right? He's like, Miles, stop, right? And Miles is just like, you said she was dead. My whole family died, and you're still trying to save Aunt May? And he's like, how many people have to suffer, Peter? How many people have to die? Because you will not accept the truth of the world that we live in. And Peter just puts the haymaker on Miles, right? Just cold cocks him. And he just asks, right, if it was your mother, would you leave her behind? Would you abandon her? Like you're asking to abandon Mom. And the reality here is the answer is no. Miles Morales would do whatever he had to do to save the life of his mother. So it's one of these situations where it's Miles coming from this perspective, being able to understand it in his own way, but he and Peter handle things very differently. I would go so far as to say Miles Morales has not really experienced loss the same way Peter Parker has. Miles lost his mom in the original Ultimate Universe, right? She was killed by Venom back in that storyline. He's lost people close to him, right? It's not to say that he hasn't experienced loss, but Peter Parker's entire life is nothing but tragedy and loss. Peter Parker has lost Gwen Stacy. He lost his Uncle Ben. He's lost Harry Osborn, I don't even know how many times. Right? He's lost himself before. He's been confronted with clone sagas, which I guess technically Miles Morales has. But the struggles of Peter, I would argue, drastically outweigh the struggles of Miles. And so for Miles to suddenly come along and just say like, yeah, you should 100% give up your mom. No, Peter can't handle that. And Peter's not willing to tolerate that. And so that's when Gwen steps in, plays referee again and says, look, I'm so glad that this reunion went as chill as we predicted, but Pete, we came a long way, and you have to listen to us before you kick us to the curb. And Miles really doesn't like Peter because he's like, I mean, forget it, right? If that's his whole thing, he's staying here in the city of New York for Aunt May, this woman that cannot be saved, then let him stay here, and let him just suffer and die with everybody else here. We'll just go back and deal with it. But Gwen cuts him off. Right? She's like, sit the tough guy, like, we're trying logic. And when Peter's kind of dismissive, he's like, whatever it is, someone else has to deal with that. Gwen shows him something. And Peter's just like, that's not real. There's no way it can be. And she just says, I'm sorry, but it is real, right? It has to be you, Peter. And so at that point, you have Gwen, and you have Miles, and then you have Peter who go back and see Celia. And there's a lot of history there between these guys, right? A lot of experience and moments that they shared over all this time. And so Celia's just kind of like, you know what? We're going to let the boys talk and work this out. And you and I are going to go get drinks and chill. Right? We're going to go do our own girl talk. That kind of thing. And so Miles is just kind of like, man, you look terrible. Right? And Peter just tells him, like, I'm pretty much done. So yeah, that makes sense. And he's like, I mean, you look great, though. California agrees with you. And the kind of catching that they do are like small little things like that, right? Miles says, like, come on, like, you are literally dying to stay here on a fool's errand. And Peter just says, right,
Is one arm bigger than the other? I think one arm is bigger than the other. Ooh, I hope this turns out okay.
A key for every lock. If we were, no one would have lost anyone on Revelation Day. And he says, you tried, Peter, you tried, and you hit the end of the road. I am sorry, but it's the truth, and you know it. And Peter just tells him, right, you don't know what that means, Miles. I cannot just let her go. And in that moment, Aunt May appears. And Aunt May just says, you died, right? Gwen Stacy died. And Peter tells her, right, like, well, it's not that Gwen Stacy, right? You're confused. Clearly it's not. She did die at the hands of the Green Goblin, but Spider-Gwen, as we all know, is from an alternate reality. But Aunt May just says, I went to her funeral, Peter. I know what I have seen. And she says, Gwen died at the hands of that terrible Spider-Man. Who are you? Right? And at that moment, it's just like, help her down, Peter. Right? And like, literally, Celia, it's like, you have to calm her down. And Peter's just like, Miles?
Good night's nighttime underwear. Out protection versus leaving training.
Get out of here. Like, you need to leave right now. And in that moment, Aunt May freaks out and just says, you die. And just morphs into this gigantic being that can only really even be described as nightmare fuel. And so in understanding what happened with Aunt May, what this does is it switches over to everything 2 years after the Age of Revelation had basically kicked off. And you pick up with Dr. Octopus, and he says, my time would be better spent expanding mutagenetic fields, right? And he says, were it any other woman, right? Because Dr. Octopus was married to Aunt May. If I remember correctly, they got married, I believe. And he says, your aunt's primary mutation is responsive physical adaptation. Any threat triggers explosive cellular augmentation. Damage to her brain tissue means no control or awareness when she transforms. When stressed, she is essentially a tumorous amygdala with teeth, stronger and more impervious to physical damage than the Hulk. My anti-mutagenic field allowed capture, but May is only stable in this stasis chamber. There is no cure, only the unthinkable. And Peter's just kind of like, what are we missing? And Miles just cold cocks him, right? And he's like, you're missing everything, right? Millions of people die. Millions still need your help. And you are throwing the bodies of our friends at a problem that cannot be solved. How many people we love need to die until you accept the facts? May cannot be saved. And so then you jump back to when Aunt May is basically going haywire as this gigantic monster. He refuses to accept the fact that the only way to really save Aunt May is to put her out of her misery, right? To kill her, right? To put her down. Because otherwise, she's just suffering as this gigantic monster. And one of the things they have to contend with here is that with Aunt May transforming the way that she is, she's on a mindless rampage. And there are families 3 blocks in every direction. And so Peter has to face the facts here. That what's asked by Miles Morales is he says, would she want this, right? Would Aunt May want to continue living this fate that she's living now? And so what you get are these incredible flashbacks between Peter Parker and Aunt May when he's younger. The idea of him helping her go over what's essentially her will, right? Becoming the executor of her estate, the administrator of her estate. And the idea that Aunt May is just kind of like, no, right? Like, this should not be your job, right? This should be the job of myself to get these things sorted out. And this should be the job of somebody else, right? Some kind of an executor. You just need to be able to live your life. And where he looks to guys like J. Jonah Jameson, right? People like that. Well, in this moment, it really is Jonah more than anything, because Jonah in this flashback, right, was married to Aunt May. But the reality here is that Jonah is dead. And Mary Jane Watson, and Flash Thompson, Ricardo, Randy, the list goes on and on and on. And Peter just kind of convinces himself, there has to be something that I haven't tried. There has to be something that I haven't quite thought of yet. And what he says is that I've known Celia Reyes for over a decade. She's raised her voice in anger and combat that she never asked for. In battlefield triage, she has never cried out in panic. And she does, right? And that's where Peter's just kind of facing these 2 statements on either side. It's Celia Reyes freaking out. Like, there's families everywhere, Peter. My force fields are not going to hold. It's Miles Morales telling him, how many people need to die until you accept these facts? And Peter just says, there is no cure, only the unthinkable. And that's when he has to come to terms with the reality of his life. Because at that moment, he says, families, right? My family, my responsibility. And so in that moment, he attacks Aunt May, and she immediately starts focusing on him. And he says, drop the outer shield, Cleo, please. Right? He just says, let's go for a walk, pretty lady, and leads Aunt May away. Now, initially, everybody kind of wants to go chasing after him, but for the most part, they're basically held back, right? It's like, no. Peter needs to be able to handle this. He does lead them on a merry chase against what's essentially the Marauders. A whole bunch of them get killed and smashed to pieces. It's not really all that important, but it kind of recollects and flashes back on these important life lessons that Peter learned from Aunt May. And it's this beautiful element to the relationship that you never really get to see. More often than not, when you see the life lessons that Peter learned at a young age, it usually comes from Uncle Ben. But with great power must also come great responsibility, different things like that. But seeing that Aunt May was essentially a mother for Peter Parker, we know that, right, as the reader, but seeing seeing it being addressed this way within the comic is beautifully done. Because Peter learns about the idea like charity, right? And he asks the question, like, what's charity? And Aunt May says, helping people in need. And he's like, well, I mean, what if they're not nice? And she says, then we might need to help those people even more. Right? He says things like, Uncle Ben says that some guys don't listen unless you're ringing their bell, right? And she asks, like, how did that work out for you? Right? So not every problem can be solved with fighting. The experiences kind of go on and on and on and on. The idea of the two of them talking about death, passing on. And Peter says, like, so everybody dies? And she says, eventually. And then he just asks, what happens after? The question every child asks when they're learning about mortality for the first time. And she says, no one knows really, right? The last great adventure. Again, this entire conversation coming off the heels of the passing of Uncle Ben. And so he says, if you're going to die, then I think I want to come too. And Aunt May just says, no, I don't think so, right? You'll have a lot of living left to do. And so Peter just kind of recollecting on this moment just says, do the math, it's my aunt. The chamber is lined with lead, panels backed by 6 feet of concrete, buried 40 feet beneath the city. Override the fail-safes, right? She's my aunt. Flood the lab with radiation, 10,000 rads every half second. No one outside would be hurt, right? She's my Aunt May. It's my responsibility. No one other than her. She is my mother. And so in that moment, when she goes to attack Peter, Peter just says, you were right, May. I was not strong enough. I'm sorry. And like at that moment, immediately hits the button and fills the room with radiation and kills Aunt May. Like he literally puts her down, right? And so Miles comes swinging in, and he's just looking into the room where Peter's in there with all this radiation. And Aunt May just says, you used to want to be an astronaut. That was a scary thought. And he says, I was 5, May. And she says, you're still 5. And a man and a baby. That's how parents see our children. And she says, I hope that you and Celia get to experience it one day. When your 5-year-old says that he wants to go to Mars, or says he wants to study science at Oxford, or he's fighting off crime in New York City, who will have 2 thoughts at the same time. The first, the loudest, will be, don't leave me. And the second, the quieter one, the strong kind of quiet says, thank you for sharing your life with me. Now go share it with the world. Thank you for making my life glorious, Peter, and for letting me go. It's crushing, right? Because she says, a mother could not have asked for a better son. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. I told you, it's an incredible story. It's beautiful. One of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
Hurry! Scott 1000 toilet paper helps prevent clogs by dissolving 10 times faster in water. Get more with Scott.
Yes, he's a shallow pool. Didn't you hear it? We're swagging. He heard it from the stable hand, who heard it from his father, a fisherman. The shipmate claims he saw it.
The Batman who laughs is the Batman who was infected by Joker toxin in the Dark Knight's metal event. This is the full story for his main series and the follower. This is the full story of Absolute Batman's introduction to Arkham and his encounters with Mr. Freeze and Bane. Then, the Jeep bounces through the jungles of Tanzania. A young Victor Freeze stares out the window at the passing wildlife. He isn't looking forward to going up into the mountains and looking inside a glacier for his father's studies. But his father promises that there will be even more life inside the glacier, hidden away in the ice. But something is wrong with Victor. His eyes begin to go red, and blood leaks out like tears. Gotham City, present day. Snow falls from the night sky as the group of friends meet at a makeshift memorial to bid farewell to one of their own. Well, who wants to start? Ozzy, you probably knew him best. Anything you want to say? Waylon asks as he glances over his shoulder. And Ozzy shakes his head and motions to Harvey. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know. We all knew him, and Harvey's the one who likes to talk for a living, he says softly. They all draw out matchbooks and begin to light matches, gently tossing them into the memorial, mimicking a game they used to play as children. A game that their friend, Mitchell Matches Malone, was always the best at. So, who saw him last? Waylon finally asked. But a new voice makes them all look up. The voice of another friend that they thought was dead. I did. I was the last person to see him, Bruce says as he steps into the shadows of the alley. 1 week ago, Bruce was walking through the city. Gotham City had declared martial law since the fall of the party animals in Black Mass, with the mayor explaining that the more heavily armed police force was intended to protect its citizens from the likes of Batman and others. Bruce passes a group of cops, now armed like a military unit. Drones patrol the skies above and search for the vigilante, but Bruce has been quiet. He has kept low since Pennyworth has patched him up, agreeing he needed to heal. But he stops and looks out over the bay at the mystery art and facility that is being built on an island in the harbor. Bruce needs to get inside, so he looks to an old friend who was good at forging papers. Bruce, is that really you? Matches Malone says as he walks forward. Bruce smiles at his thin and slightly disheveled-looking friend and reaches to shake his hand. But Matches glances around and suddenly pulls Bruce away. "Walk with me, buddy," Matches whispers. The two start walking, and Matches explains that he'd gotten Bruce's papers, but also made his own, and had been working on the island for a week. "You didn't," Bruce whispers, cursing himself for not realizing that Matches would do this. He always stuck his neck out for the others when they were younger. But Matches smiles weakly and nods, explaining that something weird is going on in that place, that it is one of the worst prisons he's ever been in. "And they're putting people in there already. It's up and running. I'm going back tomorrow. You should take this," Matches says as he pulls out his phone and hands it to Bruce. Bruce turns away, unsure of what to say to his friend. The Matches puts a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, it's good to see you, man. Truly. I miss you and the guys. Crime Alley life, right? I wouldn't have done it if I didn't want to. I owe you." "For," Matches begins to say, but he suddenly gasps and chokes on his words. Bruce turns around and stares in shock as Matches begins to bleed from his pores and out his ears. He gasps and falls to the ground. All of his blood seemingly exploded from his body at once. Bruce stares down at his friend. Though it pains him, he realizes that he can't be caught with the body. He quickly reaches down for Match's phone and rushes away. Back in the alley, Bruce explains to his friends that Matches died from some sort of chemical weapon. There are some leads on his phone, clues. I'll get the person who did this, promise. But I just wanted to tell you that, Bruce says as he begins to turn away. That his friends become angry, pointing out that he should have told them about being Batman. "We thought you were dead. The last thing any of us heard about you was you diving from Ozzy's plane dressed like Nosferatu," Edward points out. But Bruce shakes his head. "There's nothing to say about it. I should have kept you apart from all of this. All of you," Bruce tells them. But his friends disagree, pointing out that he worked with each of them in some aspect to help train himself for being Batman. But Bruce just shakes his head and turns to walk away, growling. He needs to get back to work. Later, Bruce has gone through Match's phone. The clues point to a list of researchers for Arc M, including the name of Victor Fries, owner of the V-Corp Corporation that works out of Gotham. Bruce tracked their headquarters to a building that uses enough power to light the city block. That night, Batman hunts once more. A snowstorm swirls through the night sky, and Batman glides on his wings, knowing that the patrolling drones will be blind in the storm. But his luck doesn't hold, as the storm stops halfway to his target. The police immediately spot the Dark Knight and send the remote drones after him. So Batman goes low, folding his cape and diving down to street level. using his cape's claws to latch onto the rail tracks and swing out of the drone's way. Suddenly, his comms buzz. Bruce, I have information, Alfred says over the line. I'm listening. Bruce grunts as he dodges another attack from the drones. There's a pause. How's your arm? Are you resting? Alfred asks. He already knows the answer. Yeah. What did you find out? Bruce continues. Alfred explains that he tracked down the agent that killed Matches and discovered that it wasn't a biological weapon, but a bacterium. There's no
Need a last minute gift that doesn't feel last minute? Try new 10-minute custom framing at Michael's. Simply upload your photo, choose your frame size and color, and we'll print and frame it while you shop for just $2.
Not in the UK or at the WHO, Alfred explains. Then where did it come from? Bruce questions as he swoops low. Two police officers spot him and prepare to open fire. But Batman lashes out with his cape claws and hooks one of them. A quick flick of the cape sends the officer into his partner. We don't know. I'll be back in a few days and we can track it down. Until then, take care of yourself, kid. Alfred orders. Batman leaps up and begins to scale the building, heading for the roof access as he hangs up with his new partner. Inside, Bruce switches back to his civilian clothes, pretending to be an inspector from the power company, making sure the building is up to code. Inside the offices of V-Corp, he finds several prehistoric creatures frozen in ice. He puts a hand to the glass, marveling at how real they are. They're all real, if that's what you're wondering, a voice calls out. Bruce turns as a blonde scientist steps out from the inner offices. The mammoth is from Yukon, the tiger from Siberia, and the beetle from Chile. Neat, huh? The man says with a smile. The man doesn't seem suspicious of Bruce as he explains he is here for an inspection. No, please look around. If there's anything I can do for you, just say. Even if it's just a midnight tour. Dr. Freeze and his wife collected all kinds of wild specimens, the scientist says. Bruce nods as he stares out the window and looks back at the man. Do they still oversee things here then? Victor and Nora Freeze? He asks. The scientist pauses for a moment, but finally turns and taps a button on the wall. I guess you could say that. Yes, he says as the wall slides away, revealing a cryogenics tank with the bodies of Victor and Ben. Their faces pulled into horrible grimaces. I'm their son, Victor Jr., the scientist explains. He motions to the bodies as he notices Bruce's look of horror. I know it seems extreme, but it's what they wanted, he says, explaining that they founded V-Corp to freeze those suffering from terminal diseases, hoping that one day a cure will be found. Has anyone actually been revived? Bruce asks, still staring up at the frozen scientists. Victor nods. He puts a hand on the glass as he explains that he had a rare terminal disorder, so his parents froze him. Bruce nods as he turns away. So, I guess the ice saved you, he says. Victor nods sadly. Yes. Still, they told me it wouldn't hurt. When I woke up, the world would be a better place. But the ice, oh, it's not what they thought. Not at all, Victor says. Bruce's eyes widen as Victor's voice seems to change, becoming more rigid, cold. He turns back and stares as the man's skin goes gray. His veins become blue, his eyes turn red. I felt everything, every moment. Pain. My God. Ice grinds and twists. The ice isn't grace. It is fury. It's reckoning. Victor says as he turns back to Bruce, his body twisting and having become monstrous. The ice births monsters, just like me. Now to the land of ice we go, Victor says as he reaches out and grabs Bruce by the face, his icy grip tightening and pulling Bruce closer. The fingers tighten on his ankle as Victor Freeze drags Bruce down the corridor. Bruce tries to open his eyes, but the lids feel heavy and they close again. Memories flash before him, standing in the snow with his friends at the match's memorial. Bruce has turned away, prepared to continue the mission alone. But Waylon puts a hand on his shoulder. Don't you even think about running, Bruce. There's no getting out of this one, Waylon warned him. Freeze rounds the corner and drags Bruce into the main chamber. He stops and turns back. All right, Mr. Pennyworth, or whatever your name is, let's get you ready, Freeze says as he leans forward. Bruce's hand snaps up and grabs him by the throat. The hero is too weak, and Freeze smiles as he gently moves it away. Shh, easy now. Easy, he whispers. When Bruce awakens again, he is strapped inside one of the stasis tubes. Victor stands nearby, connecting the machine to the system. Ah, good. I hope you enjoyed your rest. There won't be any sleeping in the ice after all. The pain won't let you, he says, as he turns his blood-red eyes back towards Bruce. He motions to the other stasis tubes in the chamber, explaining that each is filled with the elite of Gotham, who hoped the ice could save them from the sin and pain of their lives, hoping that everything would be fixed or forgiven on the other end. But the ice isn't salvation. It's the memory of all we want to forget. It's
Lord speaks truly.
vengeance. Freeze whispers as he flips the switch. Bruce glances up as the system begins to activate, and freezing cold liquid begins to pour into his tube. The liquid begins to hit his skin, and he lets out a cry of pain as his skin begins to feel like it's burning. Victor nods in satisfaction and turns away, explaining that the liquid is so cold that the hypothermia taking over Bruce's body scrambles the nerves and makes it feel like burning. It's why people freeze to death to remove their clothes. Don't worry. Soon the suffering will pass beyond hot or cold, he says as he walks towards the door. He stops as he turns off the chamber lights, leaving Bruce shadowed in the darkness. All you'll want is death for the first 30 years or so. But hopefully, like me, you'll come to accept it and even love it. The pain. Victor calls before leaving. Bathed in darkness, more memories flash before his eyes. He stands in the alley with his friends and shrugs off Waylon's hand. Don't make me hurt you, Bruce snaps at him. But the others have gathered now, and Waylon is angrily pointing at him. If you leave now, you're no better than matches, Waylon snaps. You'll be a coward, and Batman will be too. Waylon continues as Bruce stares at him in shock. Anger flashes across Bruce's face, and he rushes at Waylon, slamming into him hard. Bruce opens his eyes wide in the stasis tank. He can see the past, images of the city, his childhood, the man who shot his father. Every cell in his body shrieks in pain. His mind is in agony. Waylon whirled on him, and Bruce punched him in the face. He went for another blow, but Waylon ducks under it and hits Bruce in the chin, forcing him back. Ozzy told us how you went after Black Mask, jumping on that boat with no way off. That was a suicide mission, Bruce, just like this one. Waylon snaps as he kicks out and hits Bruce in the stomach, knocking him to the ground. Waylon stands over him, his friends all around, just like every dare that Matches ever took, because he always felt guilty, always felt like it was his fault. Being the last one in the door that day, your father going back for him at the zoo, Waylon says. Bruce glares at him, but Waylon shakes his head and holds out a hand for his friend. Just like you always felt guilty, because it was you who got us on the trip to the zoo. All those years, matches let it eat him up inside, man, till it was nothing. But you're not there, are you? Waylon asked. The anger fell out of Bruce. He reached up for his friend's hand, allowing Waylon to pull him up. We're not done yet, man. Come on, get up, Waylon tells him with a smile. Bruce opens his eyes in the tank. He flexes his finger, and the cast he's worn breaks apart, revealing the Batarang launcher that he built. The tank is almost full now, and he flexes again, and it fires. The Batarang shoots out and hits the glass, cracking it. Another fire, another crack. One last round. Bruce flexes, and it flies. Nearby, Freeze is leaning over his console. How? His employer asks over a speaker. Victor looks at the readouts on the screen, explaining that it is a bacterium that died off 100,000 years ago. My snowfall? The markers in the crystals. Anyone whose skin touched it should already be fully readable to you, he whispers. There's a short pause before the answer. Well done. I'm looking at over 92% of Gotham's genetic profiles. Anyone give you trouble over the Malone Man? The voice asks. But Victor smiles and shakes his head. No one worth mentioning. He was a nobody. I don't expect anyone else to come knocking, he says. But suddenly, the door to the office bursts in behind him. Victor whirls as Batman stomps through the door. Batman? Ha! What are you doing here? Freeze laughs. The Batman just smiles as he holds up his gauntlet, showing the flamethrower attached. I heard you like pain, he hisses as he activates the flame. Freeze lets out an inhuman hiss and launches forward, stretching his impossibly long limbs and reaching for the Dark Knight. The Batman steps back and brings the torch to the man's face, pushing him back with a howl of pain. Bruce is moving slowly. His blood is like sludge in his veins, and he's fighting the urge to shiver. He lashes out with his cape tendrils, but Freeze is impossibly fast. His limbs sliding through the attack as he leaps to the ceiling. He grabs Batman by the face and slams him hard into the wall, cracking the concrete. Batman shakes his head as he struggles to his feet. That all you got? He grunts. But Freeze is already heading back to his console, tapping a few buttons, and he turns with a smile and motions to the stasis tanks in the chamber. Nice! Seems you love pain too. You're in good company here. See? Freeze hisses as the tanks begin to open, revealing the shriveled blue bodies of the elite who chose to freeze themselves. The strange creatures rush at Batman, howling as they reach for him. Batman's eyes widen in horror. He has no choice but to fight back, slamming his fist into the brittle things that were once human. There are too many, and they begin to overwhelm him, threatening to pull his body apart. They claw at his face, and just past the horde of monsters, you can see Freeze smiling. Come on! Don't give up now! I'm right here! Freeze calls. Back in the alley, the others look to Bruce. Waylon stops smiling and asks Bruce if he wants to die. Because your dad, he didn't want to die. And it wasn't his death that made him a hero. It was his life. That's the hard part, man. Waylon says as he lights a match and turns back to the memorial of Matches Malone, their friend. You can't let it crush you. We're survivors. So Batman needs to be one too, Waylon says. and the others nod in agreement. They turn to Bruce again. Do you want to die? Wayland asks softly. Batman shakes his head. He pushes off the horde and turns away, running towards the hole in the wall. He leaps hard and fast, crushing through the concrete and falling away from the building. He plummets through the air, wind whipping past him as he lashes out with his cape tendrils, stabbing them into the building. They grip the concrete and slow him until he is hanging upside down. Batman hangs there, catching his breath. Finally, he puts a call to Wayland, trying to warn him about freeze, about something in the snow. But his friend doesn't answer. That night, Wayland is returning to his gym, but someone jumps in from behind, knocking him out. The men in suits stand over him, reading the data on their tablets. He's the perfect specimen, taken to Arc M. The leader says before they turn away. The neutral territory of Alagan Bialya. The leaders of Kondak and Kurak are meeting, their security guards posted in the hallway outside. The two lean forward and shake hands. Can't believe it. It's like I'm dreaming, the leader of Kondak says. Today we honor all the lives lost by saying enough, the Kurak president says. They shake hands firmly, agreeing upon a final peace between their two nations. They stand and head for the door. Peace will be our legacy, they agree. But both men stop. They look down, their eyes widening in surprise as blood begins to seep from the hallway into the room. The door opens wide, revealing a massive man. Hello, Bane says calmly as he steps into the room, cracking the door frame as he shifts his massive body inside. Forgive me for interrupting, gentlemen. I was elated when I heard whispers about these peace talks, Bane says as both leaders stare up at him, which is why I was so crushed to hear about their breakdown when one of you betrayed the other in this very room, killing him and plunging your countries back into war, Bane tells them. He leans down, shifting his gaze back and forth between the two men. Which one of you was it again? Bane asks quietly. The leader from Kurak doesn't hesitate. I'll do it, he hisses. Bane's hand snaps out quickly and grabs the Kondak president by the face. The man struggles as he is lifted into the air, but Bane's hand tightens. Bones begin to crack beneath his powerful fingers, and the man's eyes suddenly burst as his skull is turned to pulp. Bane drops the man to the floor and suddenly turns, grabbing the Kurak president by the throat and tightening his grip ever so slightly. Later today, he'll give a speech declaring an escalation of operations. My employers have faith in your leadership skills, Omar. As do I. Bane says as he lowers the man to the floor and releases him. Suddenly, his coat pocket buzzes. Forgive me. I have to take this, Bane says as he answers the phone. The voice on the other end of the line murmurs. Gotham City, I'm on my way, Bane says before turning to leave.
It's the biggest game of the year, and we're down to 30 minutes for kickoff.
Meanwhile, in Gotham, it's been 2 weeks since the abduction of Waylon Jones. In that time, Batman has become a man on a mission. He is relentless in his search for his friend, waging war against the Maronis and the Falcone crime families. No criminal is safe as Batman works each night, breaking bones and trying to find answers. He overfills the hospitals. They've run out of ambulances and have had to use ride shares to transport the wounded. Eventually, One EMT worker has to borrow a rickshaw. The EMT worker shakes his head as he breathes heavily and continues to pedal. Batman. Dick Grayson whispers to himself as he keeps pedaling. But Batman isn't getting any answers. Finally, he reaches out to someone who can help. Harvey says it's temporary. Barbara Gordon tells her father she cooks dinner between her shifts, trying to explain the department's military buildup. But she suddenly stops cooking. Hey, Dad, let me call you back, Barbara tells her father, because someone is calling her from the other room. Officer Gordon. Officer Gordon. Need your help. A voice growls. Barbara grabs her pistol and rounds the corner quickly, raising the weapon. But all she finds is the bat cow that she has been working on since the party animal riots. Barbara Gordon, we need your help. Batman repeats over the radio. A short time later, Barbara arrives at the abandoned Gotham Zoo. Batman? I have your file, she calls out. Batman suddenly steps out of the shadows. Where is he? Batman growls. But Barbara holds the file close to her chest. Not so fast. First, why me? She demands. Batman stares at her for a moment before stepping forward. Because I've seen you in action. You're a good cop. Please, who took it? Batman says softly. Barbara nods and hands over the file. Apparently, us, she tells him. Later, Ozzy slams his fist against the table. Arkham? For what? He demands. Bruce nods and motions to the files, looking up at his gathered friends. The files say breaking city lockdown. Makes no sense, Bruce says. Harvey nods as he looks through the files, pointing out the city has already claimed all of Wayland's assets. Edward taps his chin as he ponders the riddle. Why would they do that? Unless he's not coming back, he points out. Alfred steps out from the shadows, explaining that these arcs are global, and that they act as black sites. Rumors are that very bad things happen in them. Abominable things, Alfred explains to them. They quickly begin to work out a plan for Batman to slip inside Arkham and rescue Wayland. Ozzy leans over the table. Do you hear how crazy this is? He shouts. Bruce smashes his fist into the table with anger. And? You wanted in on Batman? Well, this is Batman, Bruce yells. Ozzy steps up to his friend. Hey man, I was just saying it's crazy. Wasn't saying that we shouldn't do it. Meanwhile, Jim Gordon and Martha Wayne are watching what is happening to their city. Gordon has lost the election, and now Mayor Hill is beefing up the police department. You have to get back out there. You were the police, Martha tells him as she continues to pack. But Gordon shakes his head, reminding her they lost, that they are packing up the campaign office. And we get another office. This isn't our Gotham, Martha snaps at him. But Jim looks at her, reminding her that she has always backed him up. I've been thinking about it, and it's past time that I followed you. So, what's next for Martha Wayne? He asks. Later, beneath the water of Gotham Bay, Batman prepares himself. Alfred nods as he checks his equipment. Listen, kid, he begins to say. What is it? I need to go, Batman says. Alfred hesitates for a moment. Nothing. Just good luck, he says to her. Batman launches himself from the bat tank and into the water, listening to Alfred over the comms as he directs the Dark Knight into the tunnels that will lead him to Arkham. Batman makes his way inside, finally finding the grate that should lead him to the facility. All right, I'm near the entry point, Batman whispers over the comms. But Alfred shakes his head as he stares at the monitors. No, that can't be right. You're too low, Alfred says to him, explaining that he's still at least 100 meters beneath the prison. But Batman peeks through the vent and stares in shock. What is it? Bruce, what are you looking at? Alfred asks. Batman pulls himself free of the pipe and stares at the massive subterranean cavern. The real Arkham, Batman says softly. He descends to the city, begins to move through the shadows, finally finding his way to the command structure. Batman stops as he looks at a strange glass case, which houses the skeleton of some kind of winged man. A man bat. Pennyworth, come in. I don't know what I'm looking at anymore. Batman hisses. The comms are silent. Pennyworth, are you there? He calls into the comms. For the first time, Alfred can hear fear in his voice. But he turns as something massive steps from the shadows.
If someone showed you, proved it to you, would that frighten you?
Good morning, Kansas City. Let's take a look at today. Today's
People have a right to know the truth. It belongs to 7 billion people.
What is it?
You won't believe me if I told you. So I'm gonna show you.
What are you gonna do?
Full disclosure to the whole world. All at once. People go wondering.
Hello, Bane says softly, before lashing out and kicking Batman in the chest, knocking him away. Batman rolls to his feet and reaches for his bat claws, readying himself. But Bane doesn't advance. He holds up his hand and motions the Dark Knight forward. Go on, it's okay, he says. Batman tosses the weapons, stabbing Bane in the chest. The villain doesn't react. You can advance now, he offers. Batman hesitates for a moment at his opponent's calm demeanor before charging forward. He lashes out with a left jab, but Bane blocks it and easily reaches out and hits a pressure point in his elbow. Batman staggers back, his arm useless. Bane doesn't advance. It's all right. Focus. You have enough arm, he says. Batman charges again, swinging his right in a powerful haymaker. But Bane dodges and reaches out, hitting another pressure point before punching him in the chest. Batman stumbles back, both arms hanging uselessly at his sides. Bane takes a step forward. Hey, up here. That's right. You've still got your legs, he suggests. Batman glares at him, breathing heavily. F you, he shouts before launching forward with a round kick. But Bane once again ducks underneath it and hits another pressure point, following it up with a left hook across Batman's jaw. Batman staggers and falls to Is that all you got? I only need one leg to kick your ass, juiced up, he gasps.
I understand now.
But Bane shakes his head. Juiced up? Friend, I haven't even used this stuff yet. But if you want to see what it does, he explains. He taps a button, and Batman watches as the pulsing tubes connected to his body begin to work. Bane's body begins to twist and grow, his muscles becoming massive as the red and green liquid flows through them, pushing against his skin in a grotesque mockery of the human body. What are you? Batman gasps. Bane reaches out and grabs him by the throat, easily lifting him into the air. Call me Bane. Welcome to your new home. Bane growls at him. Now, let's get you prepped for surgery. June, Gotham. Martha Wayne is already worried about her missing son. But Jim Gordon tries to calm her. Mar, it's only been a few days. He starts to explain. But she won't listen. Something's wrong with Bruce. She can feel it. Somewhere else, near Gotham, Dr. Arkham reaches down for her recorder, taps the button, and begins her report on Subject 27 as she watches it on monitors. Sedated male presented at 6 foot 9 inches, 421 pounds. 6 staff were required to carry him in. Removal of his costume triggered a series of booby traps. Numerous injuries occurred. The subject remains under heavy sedation. All data suggests he'll remain incapacitated for at least 48 hours. Dr. Arkham explains. Bruce opens his eyes. He struggles to his feet and looks around. The cell is a blank white. He finds the door. Reaching it, he removes the lockpick he hid within his upper jaw. He ignores the blood that fills his mouth as he picks them. It slides open, and he moves into the shadows of the corridor outside. Bruce moves quickly, but cautiously, sliding past strangest and glass walls. Begin doctor's log. The subject has escaped his environment and is currently at large. Initial visuals place him in the Southwest Complex, possibly en route to the clay biome. Dr. Arkham reports. Bruce moves into a new area. The ground seems to give and squish beneath his feet. He looks down as hands begin to rise up from the floor. It hurts! Hurts so bad! A voice whispers. Bruce's eyes widen in shock as a face begins to form beneath him, and he realizes the floor is made of morphing human flesh. The hands grasp at him, holding him in place and pulling him down. Get off! Bruce shouts, but he looks up as something massive steps from the shadows. Hello again, Bane says politely, before hitting Bruce hard enough to knock him out. The massive villain stares down as Bruce falls to the floor, his landing cushioned by the clay arms. Subject 27 apprehended by the crime. Will need infirmary stay before being returned to his environment. End doctor's log. Dr. Arkham reports. Keep trying, please. Bane tells the unconscious man.
5 years since impact. How are you beginning first, Lily?
The crater is our best bet.
Sometime in the past, the crew sits on the couch and watch Wayland's next opponent. That's him there, the big one. That's Bibbo, Wayland says as he points to the boxer. Bruce waves away the idea. He's not so big, Wayne, Bruce says. Oswald shakes his head. He looks pretty big to me, he points out. They watch as Bibbo hits his opponent again and again. See? His left is not as fast, Bruce says as he points at the screen. Oswald shakes his head. That actually looks pretty fast, he points out. Wayland jumps up and starts to shadow box. I'm coming for you, Bibbo, he snaps. He turns back to the group who are looking at him with concern. Come on, he's not that tough, Wayland says with a shrug. But Oswald shakes his head. I mean, he looks pretty tough, he begins to point out. Shut up, Oz, will you? Harvey cuts him off. But Bruce is there for his friend. Training July. Gotham. Martha has gone to Harveyville. It's It's been a month since Bruce's disappearance. She's worried. Somewhere else, near Gotham, Dr. Arkham watches, reporting that Subject 27 has become more docile in his 45 days of captivity. He barely reacts to the staff that come in and clean his cell. Has stopped eating, forcing them to attach a feeding tube to his stomach. It's the staff's diagnosis that Subject 27 has finally fallen into total submission. End doctor's log. Dr. Arkham reports. The door to Bruce's cell slides open, and the cleaning staff walks in. Bruce's eyes snap open. He moves quickly, jumping to his feet and lashing out, kicking the first one in the chin, knocking him to the ground and spraying the wall with blood. Bruce whirls, hitting them again and again. Update. Staff diagnosis may have been premature. Dr. Arkham reports, explaining that Subject 27's docility was performative, and that he had pulled out some of his own teeth, was using them as sharp weapons. He had also weaponized the feeding tube, and was using it to spray stomach acid on the staff. Bruce whirls again, slashing one of the staff members across the face before lifting the feeding tube and spraying another. The sound of sizzling flesh and screams fill the cell. Perhaps the most impressive was what he did with his latrine. After collecting a large amount of guano inside and then urinating on it for weeks, Subject 27 was able to create a highly flammable compound, not unlike gunpowder, which he then used to explode the wall of his cell, Dr. Arkham reports. The wall detonates outward, and Bruce moves into the shadowy corridors beyond. He doesn't move slowly this time, running past the experiments he saw before. He slips past the cells and disappears into the walls. Reports imply that Subject 27 may have gone north, towards the Isley ecosystem. Dr. Arkham explains. Bruce keeps moving, now finding a massive forest within the compound. He steps into the trees, but suddenly he turns as one of the trunks opens eyes and stares at him. Vines reach out and wrap around his body, holding him tightly. Something steps from the trees. Strange creatures made of bark and muck. Out! The green ones! Out! A female voice whispers. She opens her mouth and vines shoot forward, pulling at Bruce and writhing into his mouth and eyes. Let us out! The woman hisses, but a massive hand reaches out and grabs the tree woman's head, ripping it from her body and tossing it away. Hey there, Bane says to Bruce as he stalks closer. He raises his fists and begins to pummel Bruce again and again. Give up, please, Bane tells him. August, Gotham. Martha Wayne has begun to hand out flyers. No one has seen Bruce. Somewhere else. Bruce gets to his feet. His head is shaved. Strange green veins are beneath his skin. Dr. Arkham reports. Day 91. Subject 27 shows remarkable resilience. After 2 weeks of surgeries, he has managed to survive the full cycle, unlike all 26 subjects before him. 27's body is ready. All that remains is for him to finally surrender in spirit, she reports. She believes that he has, but the primes suggest that they tested one last time. Bruce turns. The bat suit is hanging in his cell, staring at him. But Bruce shakes his head and turns away. Just leave me alone. It's over. Don't you get it? There's no winning. Bruce hisses out, but he turns back. The cowl continues to stare at him. The cell wall explodes outwards as Batman thunders through it, his massive axe